What's up, Arc Junkies? Welcome to Fronius Fridays, a special bonus episode of the Arc Junkies podcast. While I was attending FabTech, I had the chance to sit down and chat with some of the masterminds behind the cool, innovative equipment Fronius has to offer. In this episode, we talk about some of the solutions Fronius has to help alleviate some of the pressures of the current skills gap and labor shortages when it comes to welding. We also discuss some really cool ways to educate and train your employees to help motivate them and launch them down a path of career development. Let's go ahead and get into the episode.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, guys, we're over here at the Fronius booth, FabTech 2023. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and let the listeners know who you are.
All right, so first, my name is Sean McKean. I'm an application engineer for the tech support department out of the national headquarters. I've been with Fronius for about 4 years, and right now I focus on being the TIG and plasma expert for the United States.
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Nick Wrigley. I've been with Fronius for about 4 years now. I'm a system engineer. My main focus is welding data and applications.
And I'm Jacob Cobb. I work in the tech support team as well, and I work as another applications guy. So I do a lot of welding. A lot of the robotic stuff starts coming my way, and I've been starting to work my way into a twin role.
Okay. So today we're talking about the skills shortage and some of the solutions that Fronius has to offer the industry, the market. What's Fronius doing to kind of fill that void, fill that gap? Are you attracting new talent, or are you focusing more on automation to kind of fill that skills gap?
Multiple things, actually. So it depends on where you want to talk about it in terms of automation, manual welding, or just data keeping. So from the manual welding side, I'll take the lead on that as far as some of our processes. So our processes are made to make the user friendliness of welding a bit better, and then a lot easier to maintain consistent welds. So some of our MIG processes have automatic arc length regulation. So if you're bouncing the torch up and down for a new guy, it doesn't matter. We can keep the same weld profile as long as your travel speed's about the same. On the TIG side, we have our new dynamic wire process. It's a regulated cold feed TIG, so it makes it a lot easier than the regular cold feed TIG, where everything was constant and you still had to be a 4 or 5 year welder with a lot of experience to make it work. Now we can pick up a new guy, barely know anything about TIG welding. As long as he doesn't dip the tungsten, we can put two plates together and actually get them welded. I'll defer to these guys on the robotic side and then the data keeping side.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the manual side, and then we can get into those as well, because that was kind of one of the things I got to test out some of the Fronius equipment as a welding instructor, and I was like, man, this stuff is great, but not if I want to keep my job, because this equipment's kind of making up for some of the bad habits, poor techniques, and things like that. So how does that system actually work? I mean, is it just regulating and registering voltage and compensating for that?
Yeah, so depending on what we're talking about, so on the MIG side, we're taking resistance readings while we're welding. So it's just a big Ohm's law theory. If everybody knows what that is, just volts equals I times R, right? So you got your current and voltage, and in MIG welding, they're both pretty much set. So your arc length then is your resistance, and that's determining what's going on. So we're just reading that on the MIG side, and when you're increasing that, you're increasing the resistance, and we're compensating for that on our end and increasing the wire feed speed to give you the same weld appearance on that side. On the TIG side, what we're doing is we're doing a closed circuit regulation, and then a voltage regulation. So we're looking for a closed circuit with the wire. We've got a contact tip on the feeder setup, and then a plate inside of the feeder. And then that's wired to one of the boards on the inside. So what it wants to see is that wire actually come out, touch the puddle. It'll actually stop feeding when it touches the puddle. Wait for the droplet to detach. Open the circuit back up, and then it'll feed. So it's actually an incremental feed instead of a constant feed like in your normal cold wire feed TIG process. The other thing we added to it was the voltage regulation. So just like with the MIG side, it's just voltage instead of resistance. Your arc length determines the voltage intake. So as we see the voltage increase or decrease, we're going to modify that wire feed speed depending on what's going on. So on the high side, when you see the voltage increase, Usually you'll see that in a poor fit-up situation or like a situation where you might be about to blow through. It'll sense that voltage increase, pick up the wire feed speed within a certain limit, and actually account for some of that. So what we've been kind of recommending is any fit-up tolerance within 10% material thickness. You can keep the same parameters, same travel manipulation, and go along and fill it, and it'll be the same appearance. Anything more, it'll still weld it, just might end up with a little undercut. And then the down or the low voltage side of that comes into play when you're like running over tacks or coming into a bead that you've already had. It'll sense that voltage drop. It'll actually reduce the wire feed speed to a very slow crawl, almost stop. So you can just sit there, let the heat soak in. If your tack's smaller than the end weld size, you can sit there for a hot minute till it fills up to normal weld size and then continue traveling along. You'll never even know there's a tack there.
Okay. Now, how often do you run into issues with that system? I mean, you have that technology built into it, but we all know, like, if you have a loose contact tip, you got a loose terminal, you got a bad ground clamp. How does that play into that system? Does it kind of throw it for a loop, or are you able to kind of troubleshoot those issues?
Yeah, so we can definitely troubleshoot those issues. How we kind of address those is just a proper training up front, ideally. Obviously, being a big manufacturer and shipping a lot of stuff, we can't be there every time a new system shows up. But as long as everybody knows that they can contact our tech support department or just Fronius in general, request documentation on how to set it up. We've got pretty specific instructions on how to get as close as you can to issue-free welding as far as the setup goes. So how to tighten, what to tighten, how to set it up in the order of what to set up in, and then what to look for. So like one of the main catches on it is the distance between the wire and the tungsten. So that is completely based on the wire size you have and then the amperage. So we give you a couple recommendations on where to start for that, and then the rest is going to be based off of you as a manual welder. We can't kind of account for every situation, depending on how somebody holds the torch, whether they lay it down a little more than the next guy. But we can give you a good baseline starting kind of a document. And then, like I said, you contact our tech support department. It's available for anybody. As long as you got a Fronius welder and can call the number, we can talk to you. One of our phone guys will forward it to one of our engineers, myself, Jake, who's also here, or one of the other guys that we have on staff. We'll pick it up, trying to troubleshoot on the phone with you, get you going, but try to avoid having anybody have to come set up or have you frustrated with the equipment in general.
Okay, yeah, that's one of the problems I see with new welders. I mean, it's even sometimes some of the more experienced welders is loose contact tips or a bad workpiece clamp. You know, they don't know to tighten these things down. But those are the issues. I mean, that creates choke points in that electrical arc. That's creating the resistance. So when you have a hot ground clamp, you know, or a ground clamp or a workpiece clamp should be at room temperature. If it's not, you need to snug that down. Check your connections.
Exactly.
Same thing with the contact tip. People are like, I just don't understand what's going wrong here. You take the nozzle apart and you're like, well, your contact tip's finger tight, bud. You got to crank that thing down a little bit. That's where it's energizing that wire from.
Yeah, one of the things we have that separates us from a lot of the other manufacturers in that department, especially with loose fittings or loose connections or just switching grounds, is our equipment actually utilizes what we call an RL check or an RL alignment. This takes a measurement of the resistance and inductance in the welding circuit. So your torch and your ground and then everything it's connected to and where it's going to go through. We're going to take a reading. What we're able to do with that is actually apply the parameters you have set on the machine accurately to the workpiece. What happens a lot when you don't have that is, say you're in a shop with 30, 40 welders. Everybody's got different setups. Say one guy's clamped to a rusty piece, another guy's clamped to a shiny, bright, clean piece, or another guy's just on a giant part. Their parameters, even though they may be doing close to the same thing, could be all over the place. With ours, we do this resistance check. It accounts for the resistance and inductance in the circuit, and then we can apply what we set on the machine accurately, actually get, say, the 150 amps that we're calling for, and then we can maintain consistency across different configurations and different setups. So as long as they do the RL check, we kind of have that problem solved. That's the main communication we have to make with people is do this RL check. It'll set up the system from the start, make sure your parameters are actually being applied accurately, and then you don't have to worry about, say, it's welding, but it's welding too cold or too hot, and it welded fine yesterday. It's usually just a change in the welding circuit that you made. Just have to do this little check, and then everything goes back.
Okay, and is that like a document that you kind of refer people to?
Yep, it comes
like
in the instructions, and then even depending on what equipment you have. So our industrial equipment with the faceplates, it'll even walk you through step by step with graphic visuals so that you almost cannot get it wrong.
No, welders love pictures. It's a lot easier than reading a technical manual.
Yep. And then even with our new software, we just released a 4.0 software. It's going to be extremely helpful for the industrial equipment, the equipment that has all the menus on it. You won't even need to refer to a manual to figure out how a parameter works. All you have to do is click it, turn it up, and you'll get a visual of what it's actually doing to the weld, whether it's increasing penetration, whether it's decreasing or increasing the droplet size. On the TIG side, if you're talking about AC parameters, it'll tell you whether or not it's increased the frequencies, tightening up the focus on the weld, or spreading it out. So we have multiple ways to kind of make it easier for the person to use the equipment without having to break out a set of instructions that's 200 pages long, or, go through a online document, or even call a tech support department to figure out how it works.
Okay. Now tell me a little bit more about the wire-fed TIG process you guys developed. I think you released it last year or the year before in Chicago?
Technically released at the beginning of this year, but we revealed it in Atlanta last year.
Yeah, I remember Dabs was doing some demos on that.
Yep,
it looks like a pretty slick process.
Oh, yeah. We had Dabs, Kyle Voss, and Justin Voss with us. This year we have Dabs, Zombie Weld, Frank Flerkwin, and that's all we have this year. But so it's pretty much like what I was talking about earlier. It's that modified cold feed process. So we developed it to try and make training simpler. It utilizes a tungsten fast clamp system that we have. So if anybody hasn't seen it or seen these social media posts about it, it works like a mechanical pencil. There's a button on the back of the back cap. You pull the tungsten right out, slide it right back in. It makes that initial training of a TIG welder where they keep dipping a lot less frustrating, to where within the first 10 minutes of welding, he's not ready to throw the torch or the nearest tool or his coupon.
Right.
So that's the biggest benefit to the new setup I see, is the training. Where it's going to come into production, I see the most benefit for that process in anything heavy wall. So if you're doing really thick structural, heavy pipe wall, anything like that, it's going to be phenomenal. The best example I can give is we had a customer down in Virginia with our distributor ARC3 Gases, one of our distributors at least. We had a customer there. We were doing an end cap on a pipe, about a 1-inch thick end cap on a pipe. So we had a 1-inch outside corner fillet we had to make. They were doing it in about 4 passes. We were able to cut them to 2, just because the guy didn't have to worry about controlling filler, worrying about that muscle memory of where to keep the filler on the wire or on the puddle while he's running over it, or just how much filler, how much pressure. All he's worrying about is guiding that puddle where he needs it. Right now, it's set up to be used with a trigger, so you can trigger it on with a trigger. There is no foot pedal, there is no wire, so it's literally a one-handed operation. Makes it much simpler for the user. Maybe a little intimidating for some guys, since a lot of guys here in the U.S. are used to foot pedals. But to be honest, as long as you've got consistent joint prep or joint fit up, it's pretty much a set and go. That voltage regulation will make up for a lot of the amperage variances that you might have had with the foot pedal. So
okay, and it's also good for filling gaps as well, right?
Within reason, yeah, that's what I said. I recommend the 10% material thickness as far as keeping same weld quality and weld appearance. You can fill a bigger gap than that for sure, but once we start getting above that 10%, you start running into, even though we're filling it, we're going to run into undercut. I mean, you end up with a big gap on material, you end up with that space. That amount of amperage is just going to eat away at the edge of whatever that material is. So within a certain reason, we can make it look the same, but we're at the limit of physics at that point where you're going to end up with undercut once you hit a certain point. So,
now, you were talking about being able to take your customer down from 4 passes to 2 passes, so I'm guessing you're getting better deposition rates and faster travel speeds as well?
Yep.
So less heat input into the part, more wire?
So the travel speeds depend on the person. This one wasn't necessarily a faster travel speed. So I've seen that one on pipe. So the pipe one is where I see the travel speed. The guy can just crank the amperage. Wire feed speed in this process is based on amperage, so he doesn't have to set it himself. There's a wire feed speed correction that we have. And the reason I explain the process like a lay wire or walk the cup type process, it is very similar. The wire feed speed correction works just like you would when you're lay wiring. If you turn it up, it's like putting more pressure on your wire. You turn it down, it's like putting less pressure. You'll get more fill turning it up. You'll get less fill turning it down.
Okay.
So we were able to turn up the wire feed speed correction for these guys. They went the same travel speed, but we just turned up the amperage and the wire feed speed correction and just gave them more fill.
Okay.
So just by making it simpler for the use as far as coordination, eliminating a lot of the muscle memory he needed to focus on, we were able to just kind of increase the other things and make it a little simpler. On the pipe side, like I was saying, everything's set based on amperage. So that's one where if you want to go faster, just turn the amps up more and wiggle faster, and you're all set.
Awesome. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about data collection, because that's kind of new to me as a welder. What kind of data are you collecting, and how is that helping to with the skills issues we're having?
Sure. So one thing we're showing off this year is our WeldQ Navigator software. So it's a sequencer and editor all in one. So literally all you need is our TPSI machine as well as a computer. And an engineer can go set up jobs on the TPSI and go to the computer and set up a set of instructions with pictures, edit those pictures, and load them up into an instruction. And literally, it's like build in a Lego set. The instructions are that simple.
That's something the operator just can kind of, it's essentially a set of blueprints that
Correct.
they can go through, and it tells exactly where the weld's supposed to be, how big the weld's supposed to be.
Correct. And from that point on, you can call the jobs that the engineer set per seam or however the engineer programs it.
Okay. And then do you have like built-in welding procedure specifications for that so they can make the correct size fillet weld or fill in the groove or whatever the joint configuration is?
Correct. So we have our synergic process. So he can work off material thickness just to get a rough estimate of how the weld should be.
Okay. And this is a which process? Is this available for all processes, or it's strictly gas metal arc welding, or can you do gas tungsten as well?
Strictly MIG welding right now.
Okay.
TIG is coming real soon, but it's only for our TPSI units right now.
Okay.
I-Wave's coming real soon.
And is it limited to the modem metal transfer, like it's different for short circuit, pulse spray transfer, globular, any of that?
Nope. We'll work with everything.
Okay. And it's different alloys as well, or is it just stuck on steel?
All alloys.
Alloy?
Correct.
So you can do aluminum, steel, stainless, like
Exactly.
the big three?
Yeah.
From an application standpoint, I can tell you we have synergic lines for titanium, weird nickel alloys like Monel, Hastelloy, those weird aerospace alloys. We have copper alloys, pure copper you can run off our stuff. We can literally weld any material you want. If we don't already have a program for it, for a couple $100, we can make one for you.
Okay. And then how is that sequencer beneficial to the end user, the client, the person who's purchasing that software and that equipment?
Sure. So instead of an instructor kind of leading the welder through the process, he could just look at the computer and it'll just give him that step-by-step process, and it's super simple.
Now, are you able to track like arc on time and like machine use and all that stuff? So
Correct.
I mean, like the client at the end of the day, or the purchaser of the equipment, they can see like how much arc time is this machine being used? How is it increasing our productivity?
Correct. Yep. So the engineer or manager can go back and see how long the arc's actually been activated, as well as how long it took them to weld that piece.
Okay.
So everything can be tracked via serial number and part number.
Fantastic. What other? Is there any other points of data that you're able to collect that way they can kind of trace back and see how they're increasing productivity?
Sure. So they can look at everything from voltage, amperage, arc on time, and what job they're using, stuff like that.
Okay, very cool. Now, tell me a little bit about the automation. What is Fronius doing as far as automation?
So with the automation standpoint, that's the ultimate, okay, we don't have an operator anymore. So there's a couple different ways to go about it. You can either start introducing at a basic level, so say flex track system is what we call it. So that's like a little welding carriage that runs on a track. And that's just good for straight linear welds, or you can even wrap it around a pipe. Or you can start stepping up all the way to, say, an industrial solution. So that's your full-blown robots that you see in, like, car factories that are just welding constantly all day, all night. And then somewhere in the middle there is the new, what everyone likes to talk about, FabTech especially, is cobots. And this is a more user-friendly interface, so you're starting to get away from this industrial interface that's been around since 2000s, 90s, who knows how long, and they're trying to make it more user-friendly, more refined for these new users who just might not have that experience yet. So we're able to take advantage of what all these other manufacturers are doing and then put our stuff on it. And so from that standpoint, it's like, okay, what can we do to help them out more? So if it's a new programmer, they're not going to know that if you bend the wire, what happens when you program a bent wire through an entire part assembly. You're now going to be out of the joint everywhere and wonder what's going on. Is my robot bad? What's happening? So we have something called Teach Mode. This has been around for some time now, where it puts a little bit of energy on the wire there, and when it makes contact to the part, it just simply retracts it. And then when it goes to feed it back out again, just a moment later, it'll see if it's cleared that short. And if you have, it goes right back out to where you set it, so no more bent wires and a lot less frustration.
So kind of like voltage sensing?
It kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So it's just looking for that continuity between the wire and the base plate.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Now, you're when you were talking about the TIG track system and everything, is that something people are using out a lot or utilizing out in the field applications, or is this strictly done in a shop environment?
No. These Buggo type systems. So Buggo is a big manufacturer of these things. We have our own version of it, but that's just one everyone's familiar with, where you see them on pipelines quite a bit, where they wrap it around the whole thing, and then you put the carriage on it. You'll either have, say, TIG torches, MIG torches, whatever you need just to start filling up that groove. You also will see this on big I-beam type deals, so for bridge construction, water towers, things of that nature, where it'll be running down the track of these giant beams that are being hand-built in various pieces, and they just run along, keep it in the seam, so that way you don't have a welder having to sit there and do a 20, 30, 40-foot seam by hand.
Okay. Now, do you guys do anything with like vision technology, arc sensing, any of that? So like seam tracker type stuff?
Oh, yeah. So if you want to start getting into, say your parts aren't very consistent type deal, or maybe your programmers just aren't the most consistent, you can have it so you throw a little weave on there, and then the welder will actually go, hey, I'm seeing sidewall here and here, tell the robot, and the robot will start adjusting for you, so it'll keep it right in the joint for you. Additionally, we have other technologies like wire sense, so that way if your parts start shifting around, it'll find it for you.
Okay. Now, what's the tolerance in that?
So tolerances for like wire sense, we are down to 1/10 of a millimeter, I believe, is the latest. I like to run a little higher than that just for consistency's sake, but that's on all materials, so you get your steel, stainless, aluminums, and all wire sizes. Given you get a little bit more, what's the word for it, column strength out of thicker wire, so that way you're less likely to have any kind of deflection when you're doing your sensing. So 045 is really common.
Okay. And then you were talking about how much easier the user interface is. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
So Sean over here was starting to hint at it. The new user interface for the welder anyway has a lot more graphics involved now, and so when you start really diving into these parameters, you'll start seeing little graphics that show up that tell you, hey, if I'm turning up my wire, what's it actually doing? So you'll see the bead actually grow. Start turning up your arc length correction. That can be thought of almost like a voltage correction. Start going too high with it, you'll start seeing that undercut and everything on the toes. Turn it down too low, it'll even narrow it up and make it look like it's not wetting out properly. And then it starts getting into more and more as you go through the list of all of them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems we see, like from the welding side, is these robots are coming in. A lot of welders are apprehensive to start utilizing this newer technology because they're afraid of it. You know, they've just been, switching one or two knobs now. Now they've got this entire teach pennant or, like an iPad in front of them, or, they're able to utilize it with a cobot, but they're still kind of afraid of this technology. How can we make it easier for newer people getting into welding, or make it more attractive for people to get into welding to be able to, start adopting this technology? Oh,
absolutely. Trying to make it less intimidating to walk up to something that you might not be familiar with and just grab it and go. It's not something that's very easy, especially in industrial equipment that's really meant for people that kind of already have a background in it. But if you don't have that, what are you going to do? So having these, like what we've been doing with the welder interfaces, has been really helpful, especially from our standpoint, because we do a lot of trainings around here. And so we'll go out on site or even have people come to us, and it's one thing to explain to you, but like you said earlier, pictures are incredible to have. I can't tell you how many times I picked up a piece of soapstone or something, just start drawing on their parts. Like, this is exactly what's happening right here. And they'll actually take that part and set it aside, even though it's a piece of scrap, and that'll be their reference board.
Okay.
Or the guys, they'll take a paint marker and start writing everything on the sides of the equipment. So when, say, something happens and you got to replace that piece of equipment, they'll actually take that side panel back off and put it on the new one.
Oh, wow.
So that way they have everything right there again.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking to one of my buddies earlier about, all this automation. If you come to FabTech, 5-6 years ago, you see one or two robots. And now it's like there's almost a cobot in every single booth, whether it's blending, grinding. I just seen one over at Universal Robots. They've got a plasma head attached to it. So, they're really stepping it up as far as, welding is like number 3 in the robotic market for what the applications are. Robots, you can use them to do anything. They're using them in restaurants now to cook all the food, handle it, and deliver it to the customer. But welding seems to be like the third, or one of the, it's in the top 3 of utilization for these robots.
Yeah, and then the cobots themselves, where they're helping you is the teaching. The thing that intimidates a lot of people with these industrial robots is the hard coding you have to do. And then the difference between them. Every robot, it's like a different operating system. So if we're talking about computers, if you get used to Windows, you're not going to like going to Linux or Mac. And that's the same thing with these industrial guys. With these cobots, what we're trying to solve, or what the industry is trying to solve, is making the implication of robotics a lot easier and making it not necessary to have a 4-year degree robotics engineer needed in order to program these things, or somebody that's been to a multiple week school in order to keep these things up and going. You can literally press a button, drag it where you want it, push teach, and then you can create your path that simply with them.
Okay. Now, does Fronius have like specific robotic arm companies that they work with, or are you guys pretty much universal and compatible with anything that's on the market?
Yeah, we are not specific to any brand on the market. We work pretty well with everybody.
Okay. Now, you're talking about some of the benefits Fronius has for like manual welders. Is that technology also available in the robotic applications? Is it necessary? Because, I mean, let's face it, you got a bunch of welders that are new to this stuff. They're programming the parts. I mean, if they're off as far as like their work angle and travel speed and everything, do you have the option to where that machine can kind of compensate and ensure that you're getting a good weld?
Nope, it does the same thing. I'll let Jake take the lead since he's a robotics guy. I don't want to talk for everybody here.
No, just like Sean was going to say, it's the same exact welder. When you start talking about our higher-end equipment with the touchscreen on it, that's the same exact welder that manual guy will be using and that will be thrown on a robot. The only difference is pull that interface out of the robot and you can start manually welding with it. The big thing, so like what Sean was getting at earlier, is what we call our stabilizers for some of our processes. So like a penetration stabilizer starts varying that wire feed speed, keep that heat input the same, keep your penetration the same. That's great for, like he was saying, manual welders where they might not be trained to keep that super tight, super consistent arc. And so they'll pull out, go in, float around a little bit. Same on robots. If your parts start warping in your fixturing, or say it's just something crazy starts happening, they'll start compensating for you.
The guy programming it doesn't have the best eyes. He doesn't have to be exactly 15 millimeters away or whatever it is.
Yeah, I hate it when I forget my calibrated eyes at home. It's the worst.
Right. Yeah. So earlier we were talking. I was talking to one of my buddies, and we were saying, if we want to get more people into this industry, I mean, you're literally most of the kids today, they're big into video games. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be. We were talking about putting a score on these machines. If you put a score on there, I mean, gamers are all about the high score. So, I mean, do you actually get like a weld score at the end? I mean, does it tell you how well overall everything that went through the system kind of gives you like a grade?
Unfortunately, right now, no. But that is a great idea we could bring up to internationals. If there's a certain amount of shorts maybe sensed in a pulse process or something.
Or a certain amount of faults or anything like that.
Maybe it senses a little too much amperage variance or voltage variance. It gives you a little bit of a score. That's a good idea. No?
Yeah, because I know like a lot of the virtual welders and stuff, you get done making a weld, it gives you a score. Well, now you got bragging rights. So, I mean, that'd be something cool that you guys could set up in your booth next year and be like, hey, you want to, like, here's a shot at, winning a new welding hood or something like that. Program this robot. Whoever gets the highest score at the end of the day gets, this, that, or the other.
You're keeping these ideas to us, right? You're not sharing
it's just
these
you guys.
Okay,
just you
we
guys.
just want to make sure Red and Blue don't know about this.
No, we're gonna keep this all right here. No, it was literally a conversation I was having with my buddies at the AWS booth, and I was like, that'd be kind of brilliant to set. I mean, you set up a high score. These kids are going to want to do that. You're swapping out the controller.
Oh, for sure.
And with a lot of these cobots and everything, they're switching over to an iPad interface anyway. And I mean, that's what a lot of the kids are playing on. So you can kind of show them, hey, you can get into welding. It doesn't have to be dark, dirty, and dangerous. You don't have to. I mean, it can be done in a very clean environment, and it can be a lot of fun. Especially you go through the troubleshooting. It's like a whole new mission. Going through some of this stuff, and then you get a score at the end, and you get bragging rights.
Outside of score, I think maybe the closest we come to is on our industrial stuff. You can actually pull up a documentation logbook and maybe track how long you spent welding. So maybe you're trying to cut down your cycle time. You can track, I did it this good, this good, this good, and you can maybe follow how closely you're tracking it down that way, but that's probably the closest we have right now. But
okay, yeah, you can kind of see how fast you can actually start banging these parts out and improve your productivity.
Yes, sir. And then you can monitor heat input with that. So what a lot of people don't realize is heat input is also based on travel speed. So a lot of times you can just speed up and reduce heat input and your warpage at the same time. So
right, Nick, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you when it comes to it. Is my train ran off the track there for a second. So when you have the weld sequencer on there, does that actually help with material warpage? Because I teach my welders at school, you kind of want to move around and do specific welds. Is that sequencer, does it kind of take into effect, this is kind of the pattern or the sequence, you're going to want to make these welds to prevent and limit some of this heat distortion?
Correct, for sure. You can set up your instructions so you can do one side, the other side. It all depends on how the engineer sets up his set of instructions.
Okay. And it's got to make things a little bit easier for like procedure and process development as well, because you said you have access to the data of the amps, volts, wire feed speed. I mean, you can start figuring out your heat input, calculating your joules, develop the welding procedure so everything is repeatable. Because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need repeatable parts.
Correct. Everything's stored centrally on our database, so the engineer at the end of the day is able to pull up that information.
Okay. Yeah, because we were talking about, you had mentioned something about the heat input with automation.
Oh, so we have the stabilizer. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, where as it's going along, it'll try and vary the wire feed speed so keep you super consistent for your heat input, your amperage, so that way your penetration's the same.
Yeah, and then you got repeatable results. It was the marking on the side of the machine. Because a lot of welders, they put they put the paint marks on there.
Yep.
So now we don't need to do that anymore because we're developing processes, collecting that data. So we've got repeatable welds every single time. We don't have to go over and put it on the blue mark for this part or put it on the green mark for that part. You've got actual manageable data. And then that's got to make it easier for the client when they're bidding on jobs, because now we've got our welding procedures. We've trained our welders to these specs. You're going to get repeatable parts. We're going to have a lower failure rate.
Yep. And even with the industrial equipment on top of that, those paint marks we consider the archaic form of job mode to us. So
exactly.
We now on our industrial stuff, 1,000 jobs you can save. So if you have a part and you do the same thing all the time, you can save a job for it. Next time it comes back, just pull that up. It doesn't matter if it's 2 years down the line. As long as you don't lose that data, you keep backups. You can just call that job back up. You can even customize the name for them. So you can name the job after that part on that seam, whatever.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, awesome, guys. I appreciate you taking time out of the show to come out here and hang out on the Arc Junkies podcast and kind of share a little bit about what we can do to try and fill that skills gap or tend to that need until we can get those positions filled.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right, we're back in the Fronius booth with Steve and Jason. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? We'll start with Steve, and then tell me a little bit about what you do here at Fronius.
Okay. My name is Steve Zatazalo. I have been with Fronius for about 16 years. I am currently head of the Welding Business Academy, which basically means I manage the training opportunities, both internal and external, for the company.
Jason Fredericks. So I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Perfect Welding Business Unit in the USA. So pretty much anything and everything within our business unit in the U.S., sales, marketing, all aspects across the board. So.
Okay, and you guys are coming up, 21 years now in the United States?
Absolutely.
Because I remember last year we celebrated the 20th anniversary.
Absolutely.
Down in Atlanta. Yep. So, it's good to be back to FabTech again. We want to talk about training and growth. And, Steve, you were saying you had a philosophy, or what's Fronius' philosophy on training and growth?
Well, I think that one of the things that we really think about with training is we think that training is going to be a silver bullet, that it's going to solve all the problems that everyone has with skills or experience or what have you. And I think that's a very short-sighted vision, and I think it causes us damage when we bring customers in or we make let them keep that assumption. What I really like to think about from a training standpoint is that you really got to look at the idea of what an employer needs from an employee. And at the end of the day, they want them to be profitable. They want them to be profitable in whatever job they're doing, whether that's a financial profit or that is a unsubstantiated profit. And what I like to think about is I like to think about this think about sitting on a chair. Okay, and on that chair you've got four legs, and each of those legs represents the stability of that employee and their ability to make profit for you. The more stable they are, the better the profit they can do. And training is one of those legs. But if you really think about it, if we concentrate on training by itself, what you've essentially got is you've got a person that is trying to balance on one leg of a chair. And you're surprised that he can't make the profit you're looking for. And so you're ignoring the other three legs. And so I really think that Fronius needs to concentrate on all four of those legs in whatever capability they can. So the other legs of the chair, the first one represents technology, which we are a leader in. The next one represents experience. And experience is basically how much can that person do with the equipment that you've got. Let's face it, if I'm going into a competitor's shop and I bring in Fronius, there's going to be a hit to that experience. And typically what people feel like, hey, if I train someone, I'm going to take care of that experience and I'm going to build that side of the leg. Well, the reality of it is you can't train people enough to make up for that experience. But what you can do is you can change the way that you're training so that you can make that experience grow faster. And that's what I really feel like we need to be doing. The last leg, and this is the one I think gets ignored about the most, is motivation. A lot of times people ask them, why do you come to work? Well, that's really a dumb question. I come to work because I want to get paid.
You need a paycheck,
Absolutely.
right? I'm not here to volunteer my time. This isn't a puppy shelter, right?
A better question is, what makes you want to do a better job? And by changing that small dynamic, I can now take someone that's in my classroom and I can ask them, how is this class going to make you do a better job? Do you want to do a better job? And I'm here to help you do that. And now I've got the students paying attention to what I'm teaching them. I don't think we do this in the industry, and I don't think we do this generally in training. This is one of the things I really want to change.
That's a fact. I mean, I've been in the welding industry 26 plus years, and this is the first time I've ever heard somebody say, let's focus on the motivation. Like, why do you want to come to work every day other than the paycheck? And most of the jobs I've ever got, it was because I got a paycheck at the end of the day. It wasn't until I got into education that I was like, oh, wow, I found something other than a dollar sign to get me out of bed every morning. Like, I was excited to get up every single morning and go because I was changing lives and molding minds, and that was actually more rewarding than the paycheck. It made me want to do a better job and show up every day just because the expression on the student's face, the fact that they're learning the material, they're getting passionate about it, they're able to replicate what they did the day before, the information's finally sinking in. That was my motivation to keep showing up. And the more motivated I was to be a better instructor, the more motivated the students were to be a better student, be a little bit more engaged, do their homework, ask the questions. So, yeah, that is the first time I've heard somebody mention that as part of training and growth is the motivation. Why do you want to be here? Why do you want to do this?
Thank you. It has far-reaching consequences as well. I'm not officially part of the sales process. I'm not here to sell someone. I think you can relate that teaching is a form of sales. If I can't convince you to pay attention to me, you're not going to learn what I need you to learn. But what this also does, and this is internal and external, is it allows people that don't think they're part of the sales process to realize, hey, I am a part of the sales process. I am helping in these other legs, these other aspects to it. So now you have technicians that are like, whoa, I can help that person use this equipment better, which is going to make their reputation with us better and make them more comfortable. I can have customers that I hope will start to realize that Fronius is really carrying a lot more than just the equipment they're selling or the training that they're giving me. They're really trying to expand to make my people work better, be happier, and be more motivated. Why would you not want to continue working with a company like that? And it gets us away from the idea of pursuing the almighty dollar, but at the end of the day, you make more money.
Yeah, it's kind of like an after effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, right? Our customers are going to see better value coming in when our employees are more satisfied with their work, right? Being a technology company that we are, we're all super passionate and proud of the equipment and what we do out there. But I think the differentiating factor of Fronius is really not that power source. To be completely it's the amazing people that work for us and the different approach that we go to as an organization to try to satisfy our employee base, which makes them go out and do the best that they can actually do for the customer, And it's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? So there's this mindset, like Steve said, where you just think, all right, train somebody up, they're good to go. There's way more to it than training. It's that experience that comes in and getting them through that path in a shorter amount of time. Now that's where we really get the gains at. They understand what they're going to do. They're adding more value to that customer when they're going out there, and I feel that that's something that we do a really good job with. And a lot of the stuff that Steve's changed in our more, I would say, professional organization of training, inside and external, has really changed the game in that for us. We've seen a lot better retention, and it's something that I'm proud of the entire team and organization, because it kind of takes an army of people to do that. You've got management that has to have aligned values on where we're going and align with the training and interacting and being part of the training too. So it's been a pretty awesome movement for us. So, yeah.
Nice. I like the fact that you all said that, training's not the silver bullet. Like, it's got to be an ongoing process. You can't just skill your people up at one point and just, okay, they went through the training, start your career, and then that's the last time we're actually going to deal with it. It's got to be an ongoing process. Keep continuing the growth with the training.
It's actually, this is a really interesting aspect that I'm very passionate about. So when I give a training, at the beginning of the training, I hand out what I call a task sheet. And this is an intimidating sheet, I'll be honest with you. For a 3-day training, this is about 7 to 8 pages of tasks.
That is pretty intense.
And they're basic tasks. It's about, okay, hey, do you know how to dial in a synergic line? Can you describe how to find the user profile? Can you describe what arc length does? It's stuff of that nature. And I use this as a guide for training, of course, as you can imagine, but it's what it does after training. It really does several things for me that some of them I didn't realize when I first did this, and I think some people don't realize until it's kind of identified for them. But what I've basically given is, after they're done with training, they've learned that foundation. If you've ever taken a training class and you realize it's like you're looking at this equipment, you're like, I know Steve talked about this, but I don't remember anything about how I'm supposed to use this. They can come back to this guide and they can look at these tasks, and they can say, oh, okay, I remember, let's try this. And they try that small piece, and let's try this, and they try that small piece. And they can sign off on the things that they know. They can cross off the things that don't apply to their job. Now, that's what my initial thought for this was. But some things came out of this that I didn't even think about. For instance, there's no such thing as a dumb question, but there are better questions. With this task sheet, I am now giving the student the ability to ask a question that's focused on what they're trying to do to get past. I can provide such a better answer to that, something I never really considered. The other thing I do, and I do this in class, if you can imagine being a student, I tell everyone at the end of class, I tell them, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to take this task list and understand you're not proficient at this equipment. If you want to build proficiency, and you said you want a promotion, you said you want to do a better job, whatever your desire is, I want you to take this task list and I want you to talk with your supervisor. And now I want to bring your supervisor into the equation from the training you just received. And I want you to talk with him and ask him this question. When can I practice this so I can get better at this job? And eventually, if they do this, they'll build proficiency. And if they really want to go, they now have a roadmap to become a master. And I'm bringing the supervisor into the equation. So now we've met supervisors for the most part. They know enough about the job to be dangerous, but they don't know enough how to give direct help. I'm giving the supervisor the ability to do that if they choose. I think that's something that's, it's something that we can really get a lot of traction and gain from.
I like that because I'm a person that likes to put checks in boxes, and I like to have a path to success. If I want to climb up that next rung of the ladder, tell me what I have to do. Let's map it out. I'm a visual person. I got to be able to see this. It's like, okay, you got to get these 6 boxes checked off. Cool, let's break each task down to a little, something a little bit more manageable. Then I can focus on that until I can get a check in that box and just repeat that process. Now, did it also kind of give you a benchmark of where they're at, how much training they actually need?
Not me as an instructor, because that's not the focus I'm looking for.
Okay.
As a supervisor, most certainly. As an instructor, what I'm doing is trying to build a foundation. So all I really care about is, did we cover it in class? Now, if you look at my sheet, there's actually no place for the instructor or the supervisor to sign off that they know this. What I want to teach is I want to teach the student to self-evaluate themselves. So what I have on there is an initials for the student and a date for the student to sign off so that they can go through and say, okay, I know this well enough, I'm going to sign this off. I also have the ability for them to determine the level of proficiency. Do they need to know who to ask about this, or do they need to know this well enough that they can explain it to someone else? And the student and the manager determines that. I feel my job as an instructor is to build the foundation, to give them people to talk to that's an expert, and to give them the roadmap. But really, it's the job of the manager or the supervisor to take them and give them the opportunity to actually build that proficiency.
Okay, figure out exactly where they are on that map and what they need to do to improve.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and that's where progress. I think it's a basic concept that gets overlooked when somebody hires. It's not transactional to hire an employee. You want to make sure there's a good fit, a good culture. You want to make sure that there's there's a growth path, because that's why turnover happens, right? Somebody comes in and they get stagnant in a job. And even in our industry, being an OEM, I mean, we're not hiring welders, but we're in the industry where we know there's this massive, lack of skill out there, and just not enough that we need. It's no different working for an OEM that has, where we have, welding engineers that we need, systems engineers, salespeople, technical salespeople, all those people. It's just as important, and we have just that same challenge, because to pull them in, you have to have programs, that are advantageous for career growth. We want to bring someone into Fronius that wants to be here for a long time, right? We're not looking for somebody that's going to be here for 2 years, jump into the new job, because from a manufacturer's perspective, training, there's a massive amount of cost in training too. I mean, you spend time, effort, resources, all these things to develop them, and the worst thing that you could do is not in conjunction develop that career path for them. And I think that's what we've really done a pretty good job on, and we're constantly improving that. We've started up some new programs over the last, I'm going to say, at least the last 10 years. We have a internship program. So that program works where we interact with companies schools like Penn State and Ferris State, and they have their internship programs come in, and then those interns work at Fronius for 3 months, and then we have about a 70% ratio of where they come back and work full time for us. So we're kicking off some new stuff that we're working with. Actually had a good conversation with AWS Foundation yesterday about apprenticeships, actually registered apprenticeships with, through the government programs. We're also looking at some internal apprenticeship type programs, because there's a registered version, and any company can start an apprenticeship, right? So interacting with Fronius International, our parent company, and how we can maybe do an exchange of, okay, student comes out of school and they go through WBA programs, and then they go over to Austria for 3 months, and then come back and then work in the U.S. again, all working for Fronius USA the whole time. They go work for the international side and get a lot of exposure. So we've got quite a few trainee programs that are just being initiated. We have some sales training programs, things of that nature. So it's trying to really build that talent pipeline, and the core importance of it at the end of the day is, keeping it's really based off of the customers still. Customer intimacy is our overall global strategy in the business unit. So for us to be successful in that, we have to make sure that all those boxes are checked for all of our employees that are coming through. So, the old days of coming in, throw them out in the, how I came in maybe, throw you out to the wolves and you sink or swim. I mean, sure, you can learn how to do it that way, but as a company develops and becomes more professional, I mean, we're really executing in a different fashion now. So pretty excited about it.
That's got to give you a better opportunity for employee retention, too.
Absolutely.
Because you're taking a lot of time and value, or time and effort with each employee that's coming through the door. You're giving them, a training schedule. I like the fact that you brought up apprenticeships, because, I think every company out there should have an apprenticeship. It's like you come in as an apprentice and you start working your way up till you become a journeyman in this specific trade. And I think the profile that you have set up for them with that 78-page document, that marries up perfectly with an apprenticeship program, regardless of what they're coming in to do at Fronius.
Yeah. Well, and really, it's some of the old school apprentice thought process you would see is, right, okay, well, this person doesn't know how to weld, so we're going to train them from the ground up. Well, in our world, even though there may be somebody that has a sales experience, right, but they don't know how we go to market. They don't know how we approach consultative sales. They don't know our sales process. They maybe know a little bit about our product, but they need to incorporate that. So it takes a full picture, and you can look at it from a salesperson's perspective or a technical person's perspective that comes in, and that's what's really changing for us. So, in a positive way.
I work with classes, not the whole career.
Right.
So it's not 78 pages, it's 728 pages.
Oh, I thought it was 78. Okay. I was going to say, that's a lot of homework.
Right.
Now, there's a variety of different classes. I've probably got 15, 20 classes that every person has to go through. So certainly it starts to add up. And you have to have some sort of your manager really has to be paying attention and understanding what's the focus, what's the importance. If you're thinking about a career, you're not thinking about something that's 2-3 weeks. You're thinking about something that's got a couple years to it. But it's critical what Jason was saying is that you have to really be talking to your employees, and you have to be saying, okay, hey, what are you looking for? Where do you want to be? There's this question I think anyone that's gone through a job interview's always been asked. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, yeah, I hate that question.
But let me spin this a little bit. I don't think everyone understands what that question actually should be used for, including the manager asking it. When I ask my employees that, and I ask my employees that to this day after they've already been hired, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to determine what do they need from me as a manager to remove the obstacles that keep them from getting to that point. Not, are you still going to be my employee in 5 years? When you start thinking about it from that aspect, that question takes on a completely different meaning. If you have a manager that believes that, the way I believe, my job is to make sure that my employees do the job that I need them to do for sure, but also are where they want to be now, a month from now, a year from now, and 5 years from now. It's important for me to understand where that goal is so that I can make sure that they have opportunities for experience, for trainings, even if it means that I have to call up another manager and say, hey, my guy would really like to be in your department. What's it going to take for them to get there? Now that question's a completely different question. And I don't think that enough people really pay attention to the fact that a job as a manager is to get your people to be where they need to be.
Yeah, doesn't necessarily have to be in my department. Maybe you'd be better suited for somebody else's department later on down the road. You might be a perfect candidate for what I have in my area, but you've got different skill sets that would apply somewhere else. It's going to be what's better for the individual, and a lot of times that works out to be what's better for the company.
Correct. And sometimes it actually may be what's better for you is, I know a lot of people that are like, wow, this is a different experience than what I was expecting. There's no way I'm ever going to leave this department. And now we've got a gentleman that's, part of our application team. He will never leave that application team because his boss took this attention to him. And now he's got someone that's more loyal than than any dollar can make you. There's other benefits to it that, you may not even know comes your way.
Yeah, that's why I hate that question, is you don't know what opportunities are around the next corner. You say yes to one thing, that leads to another opportunity. Like, I never thought I'd be where I'm at today. Like, I thought I was just going to be a structural steel iron worker and, retire and collect my pension and all that stuff. But I got an opportunity to go teach. That led to an opportunity to do the YouTube series. That led to an opportunity to do the podcast. Now I acquired my own school. I never thought I would be a welding instructor, let alone own my own welding school one day. So it really depends on the opportunities, and that's why I've never really liked that question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you have here that you can offer me? What opportunities do you have that I can grow as an individual as well as an employee?
No, that's an absolutely fair question. I really prefer to keep it to a 1 or 2 year time frame for that vision more than anything. But it's kind of funny we start talking about this, and I was talking with some customers, and they hit me with something that I was not prepared for, and I had to really take a step back. And what they say is like, well, Steve, it sounds like I don't really need your equipment. I need more training. And I made such a powerful argument over, hey, experience, motivation, training, that they don't need to make the replacement. And I was like, okay, this is a problem. We're still selling welding equipment. How are we going to get past that? And then it really dawned on me. If you truly want to get better at your job, if you truly want to be more profitable, you can't ignore that fourth leg, which means you want the best possible equipment. And if we do this right, what I'm hoping will happen is that we will have people demanding the best possible equipment. If you are a professional golf player, you're not going to go to Walmart and pick up your golf clubs. You're going to go find where the best possible, because that every element makes a huge, huge impact. And it took me a second to come to this realization, because I was like, wow, I'm selling training so well that someone doesn't need our equipment. It's like, no, that's not what we're saying at all.
That's not what I'm saying. Right.
Let
me take that back.
We want you to I want you to understand that if you want the best possible profit capability, if you want to be the best at your job, you can't do that without the best tools. Now, we have an advantage here because we happen to have the best tools. But if I can switch the mindset of the employee and the manager to the point of, wow, yes, I could do this job with this other equipment, but I can't get what I need and where I want to go without the right equipment, we've now had a direct impact on certainly the equipment that we're selling, but also our impact in the world.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the companies that I've dealt with, whether it's an educator or a weld consultant, it seems like the last place that a company really wants to invest any dollars is into training. I don't want to train somebody, because then they're going to leave. I mean, there's that, but if you train them well enough to leave, but treat them well enough to stay, well, guess what? They're going to stay. And the way you do that is through additional training and opportunities.
And you never forget that fourth leg, motivation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what keeps you motivated. You get these opportunities, and it's like I've got a reason to keep going to work because, I'm continuously growing. I'm not staying stagnant. I'm not doing the same repetitive task over and over and over and over. There's room for growth. There's room for opportunities. Now, how often do you provide these trainings? Is it annual or year round, or do folks have to come in for a week or two at a time?
I would love to offer more training, but I do have a staff I have to consider and such.
Right.
So this year we offered 15 application classes. We offered 6 robotics classes, and I want to say 16 service and repair classes, half of which were virtual.
Okay.
In addition to that, I can't even count the number of times that we've sent people to their location or had people come in for what we call dedicated training that's off the schedule.
Okay. Now, is this just for employees of Fronius, or do you guys also invite your clients, the people that are purchasing your equipment?
Well, the beauty about the scheduled classes is I can have both employees and non-employees in there. Because I have a checklist of what I'm working with, I don't have to worry about proprietary information being discussed during the class. So this is offered to both internal and external. Now, for the dedicated classes, we, of course, have new employees that come through. That's only for the new employees as they come through. That ranges anywhere from 1 or 2 people to I had a class of, I think, 6 people at one point, which is a lot of people to be training.
Okay.
Then the dedicated classes are almost exclusively for customers, and that's basically one customer for how many people they want to bring in. Next year, I'm expecting to double the number of scheduled classes and also start to incorporate other locations. All of these locations were in the Portage, Indiana. I'm expecting to incorporate our Wixom office, our Houston office, our office out of LA, and Chattanooga. So they will each offer 4 welding classes and 1 service class, in addition to the classes I'll be offering in Portage.
Okay. Now, do you all do on-site training as well, like private industry? Like if folks pick up your equipment, can they schedule like a class to train their crew of welders how to operate the Fronius equipment?
We do, but here's the rub there. When I talk to them about training and such, our training is incredibly hands-on, and that's purposeful. That's never going to change. So
it's got to be. We're welders.
Absolutely.
I got to get my hands on it.
So I like to keep a 75-25. 25 classroom, 75 hands-on. And there's actually a reason for the classroom I'd like to come back to.
Yeah.
So what that means now is, you're a fab shop, and you want me there for 3 days of training. You have to shut down your production and give me full access to your equipment for that 3 days. Can you do that?
It's going to be hard.
Correct. So most of our...
Unless it's in the budget.
Yep.
On top of that...
We'll schedule you around Christmas when it's slow.
And we do get people to do that.
Yep.
On top of that, think of you're a little bigger in automotive. I've got your weld technicians in my class. You have a line that goes down. What are you going to do? So you pull them out of my class. I'm trying to make a connection with that student. It's not just I'm going through a bunch of PowerPoints. I'm trying to connect with what that student wants. Now, he's mad at you for doing that, and he's frustrated with the situation. I've lost valuable learning time.
And he's lost his motivation.
Absolutely. So I prefer to do them at one of our facilities, not because it's easier for me, but because it ensures that we get the best possible training environment. So they go back and they can take those skills and apply them immediately.
You're able to keep their focus the whole time.
Absolutely.
You extract them out of that environment, right? So in manufacturing, there's always emergencies and fire drills and things that happen, and a lot of the people we're working with are, maintenance people, lead people, supervisors, people that have a job to do, and especially when you get in some of those high stress areas like automotive, like Steve said, the second that fire alarm goes on, boom, you lose them, they get extracted out of the class. So, and then, the investment that was put into it is not fully utilized. So it's really how we try to drive it. But there's situations where, customers just can't do that, right? So we have to be able to balance it on both sides. So
I like your 75-25 rule. When I was in class or when I was instructing, I do like an 80-20 approach. 20% in the classroom, 80% hands-on. I want to give you the information without all the distractions of the fume extractor going off or this going off or other people. Like I've got you dedicated, and then I also used a lot of visual aids. I'd pass around the classroom like, this is a regulator, this is a flow meter. Here's the difference. Kind of walk them through the whole thing in a more controlled environment. And then we can take everything out into the classroom, and then we can start applying everything, or we can take everything out in the lab, and then we can apply everything that we just learned in the classroom. But you got to do it like right away. So I do like an hour and a half lecture in the morning, and then we get out in the lab for the rest of the day. Now you can apply everything we talked about.
And there's something else that the classroom does that I think a lot of people don't realize. And this is another thing that I explained during my class. And I gotta blame Rhonda for this. I've been to a lot of writing conferences, and there's a concept called an elevator pitch. And this is the idea that I have the person in authority for 1 minute, and I have to give my idea to them in that minute that excites them, that gets them ready to go. And I started to look around. I started to look at people and how they talk about the job that they do, and I realized a lot of people don't know how to communicate what's going on with their job or their situation. So I have a problem with the weld. I don't know how to properly communicate that to the people that need to know so that they can get the right people there. And this is actually what I think the importance of theory is. The importance of theory is not to dive into the equipment and tell you how that arc is created through, the electronics and the power electronics and the inverter theory. The purpose of theory is to give you the communication ability of what we're about to talk about, so that you can have, if you will, the elevator pitch of what arc length means, what the PMC process means, what CMT means, so that when you have a flaw or you have a problem or you have an issue or you want to talk about how good something was, you can communicate that properly to people that don't necessarily know what you're talking about. And that's what's actually done in the classroom. I help, and I actually bring this out to students. I don't try to hide it from them. I was like, hey, part of the classroom, part of the purpose of this is so that you can communicate about the weld to people that don't know what welding is. And I find that people pay a lot more attention to the theory there and don't necessarily want to get excited and try to get into the playing with the welder quite as fast. And I get a lot more questions.
That's why we get AWS standard terms and definitions. Because there's a huge disconnect because the welder that's out there on the floor and the engineer that's designing everything, they don't speak the same language. Welders have a lot of slang. Your engineers have a lot of technical background, technical definitions, terms and stuff. It's almost like speaking a second language. You got to be able to convey what's actually going on.
And you'll see a lot of the tasks that I have on there will say, explain the PMC process in 1 minute or less. I'm now challenging you to be able to take something that's got a lot of complexity to it and choose your words in such a way where I can explain it to someone else.
And you got to be able to, do that based off your audience.
Yep. Correct.
Am I talking to the welder? Am I talking to the owner of the company? Am I talking to the sales rep? Because everybody's got like a different way of, doing things. You all got to be on the same page when it comes to this stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Steve, Jason, it was awesome having you all out here. Thank you so much for your time. I know you guys got a busy show, but I appreciate you coming on here and talking to me about the various opportunities and growth.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Bye.
Thank you. All right, we're back in the Fronius booth. Joining me is Philip and Wes. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about what you do here at Fronius.
Okay. My name's Wes Donath. I'm a regional strategic product manager, and I work with colleagues at our parent company, Fronius International, on product development.
Exactly. And my name is Philip. I work at Fronius International. We are based in Austria, and I work from Wels as a strategic product manager for industrial welding systems. And so my focus is on the TPSI side, understanding customer needs and translating them to the development department.
Fantastic. Now we're here at FabTech 2023 in Chicago, and This event is all about revealing new equipment. So what's some of the new stuff you guys have here at Fronius that you're releasing right here at FabTech, and what's some of the stuff you guys have coming down the pipe in the future?
So this year, one of the newest products is where we start addressing fume for our customers, and that's with a new product line called Exento. And it captures everything from fume that's in the work zone with the low vac system, and then we add to it the ability to extract fume right at the torch with high vac and the Exento torches or the external mounted system that goes on existing torches.
Now, how's that actually work? Because a lot of people are afraid to use something like that because it's going to suck up my shielding gas. How does that actually work without?
Yep. So the system is designed so that there's actually a specification on the torch that you can dial in the extraction to that amount, and that will meet an ISO standard that you can use as a reference here in the U.S. and North American market. And then there are features on the torch, the Exento torch, where if you get into a joint where there's maybe not a lot of access, that you can actually open up a vent and reduce the extraction by 40% so that you don't pull away the shielding gas and just focus on the smoke or the fume that you're generating.
I mean, that's great not only for the welder, but those also that may not be involved in the welding work. I mean, everybody that's in the shop, you're keeping a clean, tidy, well-ventilated area.
Definitely. So fume is a really important topic, especially if you're doing welding with any kind of stainless filler metals, if you're involved with something where maybe there's a coating or galvanized. But just in general, one of the things we focus on is customers who maybe have low ceilings in their shop and the smoke just can't really get out. There's a couple of really simple, easy-to-use systems now that you can put in place in your welding process.
Okay.
Yeah, from an application standpoint, I think the best, and for a health standpoint, the best thing is to extract the fume as far in the front as possible that doesn't even reach you as a welder.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the best way to attack it is just eliminate it altogether.
Right,
so if you can do it at the source, at the welding arc, you don't have to worry about secondary, wearing respirators, wearing a PAPR system, or, at the source fume extraction. It's done right there during the welding process.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why one of the focuses has been the high vac system with the torches themselves, because it's right at the arc.
Okay, and now tell me a little bit more about the high vac system.
Okay, so that is a system that it's a 3-phase, 460 volt input power, but it truly is adaptive. So if you do pinch the hose a little bit, the system's automatically going to try to maintain the vacuum that you've set it at. And then a very modular system, so there's several different solutions for manual welding, and you can also do robotic welding. You have to look at how much fume you're going to be extracting. If it's a lot of arc on time, you might need to look at what that's going to do to the system. But makes it simple, easy to use system, and it's actually really low cost to get into compared to a $10,000 capital purchase versus spending $100,000 on a large system for the building.
Outfitting the entire shop.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Get it right at the source. We try to keep the torch as compact as possible, for operator comfort and not a lot of weight. We have gas-cooled and water-cooled solutions. When you're doing stainless, water-cooled is kind of preferred just because it keeps everything cooler when you're doing pults or something like that with a stainless wire.
Now, now that you've got fume extraction on there, you got liquid-cooled system, I mean, is that adding a lot of additional weight to the torch?
No, actually, if you go water-cooled, it reduces the weight because the cables, everything is lighter, and it's a lot easier to move all that around. So
okay.
You end up with something that's the handle has to be just a little bit bigger for the everything to flow through it, and then the a little bit larger torch body, but you actually can remove one of the components. It makes the system work a little harder, but it will give you really good access to the weld joint.
Okay. Now with the low vac system, I mean, I would imagine with automation being such a huge industry right now, you could attach that right to the end of the robot. I mean, that gun to the end of the robot.
You can do that. That's actually still the high vac system. The low vac is the one that, as one of my sales guys says, has the snorkel on it. So.
Okay, so kind of like mobile fume extraction
exactly.
to an
yes.
extent.
Yep, that's the mobile solution. But if you want to do the robotic version of the high vac, it actually is the exact same design as what's used on the manual torches, and it fits all of our robotic systems. So,
Okay.
yep.
What else are you guys unveiling here at FabTech this year?
I would say a lot of our focus, at FabTech, is the update we've made with the TPSI user interface. That's something that Philip can really talk a lot about because he actually worked on that as a product launch for Fronius globally.
Yeah, thank you, Wes.
Yeah.
So basically, it's the TPSI system came out 10 years ago, and we've just added features, new functions all the time. So it got hard a little bit to navigate through the menus, and this is also what we got for feedback for especially manual welders, that they can't find their way around anymore. So this is what we really worked hard on the last, I would say, 2.5 years, to make it as easy as possible for a welder to set up the machine, to find the right parameter. So what we've done here is you can completely customize your welding screen. So you as a welder, you say you want to use our function like a penetration stabilizer. You can put it out on your main screen as a widget, and you see immediately what happens. So when you activate the function, you adapt the parameter, you immediately see the change in a visualization. So you don't need to make a test weld before to try out, okay, what does this function do? You can also see, okay, what will happen when I increase the frequency, for example, of a synchropulse parameter. And you can fully personalize this. So depending on what your welding challenge is, what your demands are, you set it up to yourself, and you never have to navigate through the background menus anymore. Yeah.
Now, is that case by case basis? I mean, does that change for joint configuration and type of material?
Yeah.
As far as what the visual effects are going to be when you start messing with the
not
wire feed speed,
not so much for the visual effects, for example, but if you turn on the special 4-step mode, for example, then you have automatically all the parameters for special 4-step on your main screen. So you have your start current, your end current, your slope times, and all this stuff. You turn it off, all these parameters are gone again, and it's really reduced to what's actually needed right now.
Okay.
It really allows you to set the machine up and then just from the faceplate make a quick change where you want a trigger lock, which is special 4-step, and control the hot start and the crater fill, and then quickly tap and go back to just on off. And really, that used to be something that it was buried farther in menus, and now you can do it just by tapping on that setting, and you get it right from the faceplate. And
fantastic. So that kind of eliminates, like you said, the need to do a test weld. That's one thing I used to tell my students all the time. They're like, well, how do I know what settings, that I need? It's like, whatever you do, don't make your initial first weld right on the part that needs to go out the door. Right. Grab some scrap material, same thickness, type of material, same joint configuration. Because a lot of people, what they want to do is just grab like a flat plate and make a flat weld. And they're like, oh, it's coming out too high and ropey. I was like, well, you take those same settings, you put it in a fillet weld configuration, that weld actually has a chance to kind of move out across the vertical and horizontal legs. It's going to be a much better weld, but that plate's going to give you a false indication of that. Yep. But now you're saying you don't have to do that. You can get kind of a good picture of how everything's going to turn out right on the faceplate of the machine.
Yep, and you don't have to go into menus and find where that's at and then make that change and then come back out and make a weld. You can tap on it once, change the trigger, turn on synchropulse, turn it off. We they spent a lot of time looking at what are the struggles and why do welders not make adjustments and just keep using the same setting because they don't want to get lost in an adventure in the menus. So yep.
So now you guys also have a new dual wire feeder, correct?
Correct. Yep. That was a product that came out this year. Philip also worked on that. Took us several years to develop. It's a really a new path for us where with a feeder you can pick up either torch and weld with it right away, and it works with TPSI platform and the iWave platform. With the iWave platform, you can now do all of the pulse welding processes, and you can combine it and have TIG. So for like a pipe welding solution, it's actually a very good system.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of folks doing that. They'll run like a short circuit route, and then they'll do like a pulse fill and cap, or they'll even switch over to like a flux core fill and cap application. So you're able to do that. You just set one gun down, pick up the other one. Parameters are already dialed in. Now, can you also go between different alloys? Like if you do a lot of aluminum and steel
Yeah,
in
of course.
the shop?
That's the real neat thing about our new dual wire feeder. It stores the settings of your synergic line of a material and everything per line. So if you're welding on one line, for example, flux cord wire, you set it up for flux cord wire. On the second line, you set it up for stainless steel or for solid wire. And as soon as you grab the other torch, pull the trigger, it switches over and it chooses the parameters you had used there before. So it will automatically adjust depending on which torch you're using, so which material is loaded into this process line, we call it.
Okay. And then you guys can also, another application for that would be to maybe put 035 wire on one side, 045 on the other.
Yeah, exactly. For example, for the root, and then a little bit of thicker material to fill it all up, which makes it faster, of course, then.
Yeah, no, and that all works with the TPSI and with iWave, and then if you have iWave DC, you can TIG weld. So if you needed to TIG weld a root in, if it's not, maybe the procedure doesn't allow you to do what we call LSC for the root, you can TIG, and then again you're just changing to the next job by picking up the trigger, and you're now you can do the rest of the process with one of the other torches. So
okay, so you can actually that's pretty slick that you've got the option to run your TIG with the wire fed process on one side.
No, not currently. Not in that setup with that dual head. There's a different way we would have to do that, but not with the WF25 dual. But you would still do TIG, but you're going to hold the filler metal in your hand.
Okay,
so,
gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very convenient not having to switch filler metal or processes. I mean, you got to pretty much shut everything down and change out all the consumables. You're talking about feed rolls, contact tips, everything. And then I would imagine you've got two different gas lines coming in to support
of course.
Each process.
Of course, we have two gas valves also included in it. So you can choose yourself if you want to use one gas or two gas for different materials especially. And yeah, I'm really proud of the product, I have to say, because it's like the first time in our history that we made a product specifically for one market. And this is how it turned out now with a spool holder, for example, for the 60-pound spools. It's nothing we see in Europe, for example.
Yeah, no, the large, what they consider a 450 millimeter spool is really only something in North America. They don't do that in Europe because it's a lot of differences in weight. So we're still lifting 60-pound spools and coils here, so the feeder had to be made to fit that, and it comes standard like that, in a standard package in a standard configuration. It can also boom mount, so really the whole thing was made modular. You add to it what you need.
So you can actually separate the wire feeder and set it up on a boom or a spring, and then have the power source sitting off to the side.
Exactly, and feed it, for example, also from a barrel, or you can still feed it from the spool.
Yep. Yeah, and on the gas topic that you were talking about, we actually include the ability so that if the wires both use, let's say one's 035, one's 045, but it's the same gas, you can either have two separate gas lines or you can have a Y connector so that you can just use one source. So yeah,
you just run a splitter in there.
Yep, we make it super simple for the customer to choose the direction they want to go in the standard package. Yep.
Now, odd question: can I run both guns at the same time? If I've got one guy over here that needs 045 wire or process or anything like that, can both guns run simultaneously?
Unfortunately not.
Nope. It's whoever's quicker on the draw. So whoever pulls the trigger first gets to go.
Might want to add that feature. Then you can sell two welding machines for the price of one and dominate the market.
Yeah. No, it would it'd be interesting how the performance would go on that. But no, it's whoever pulls the trigger first gets to go. So,
exactly. Yeah, and that's also a valid point. So who pulls it first, when it's welding, it's locked. So no one can come there and mess around and pull it away from you by igniting the other arc.
Okay. Now, is this something that can integrate into the, they were talking about sequencing welds earlier with the software that you have for that. Can you integrate this system into sequencing your welds?
Yep, it's going to work with what we call WeldCube Navigator, which is also a newer product for us. That works today with the single wire systems, and then in our next software update, it's going to work with the dual feeder, so that because you have to think about when you're changing back and forth, it has to know that you're making these two different process changes. So that's why we'll actually refer to them as process line 1 and process line 2 to keep control of it. But nope, that will work with WeldCube Navigator, which is that product. we're really targeting customers who are looking for a really easy way to control not just their welding process, but it's a visual standard procedure or standard process set of instructions. Really easy for a welder to follow. Especially if you're maybe only running 10 parts and then you switch and you don't run those again for another week. It makes it really easy for you to do that. But nope, that's going to integrate with that as well and work with WeldCube Navigator.
Yeah, the Navigator itself to set up, it's super easy. We did not make our own software to create the manuals, for example, for creating the instructions for the end user. You can use your own software. You can do it in PowerPoint and Paint. You can draw it by hand and use only the picture. So you can use it actually for many more steps than just the welding. You can also tell them, okay, now close the fixture. Did you cut the parts to the right length? Are there holes in the right position? So it's not only limited to the welding part of it, then I think.
Yep, correct. Yeah.
Oh, so it's actually giving you an image of what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes. Yep. Assembly steps. Cool. If you have certain instructions you want where you got to hang it for paint and certain hooks go in certain spot, you take a picture of it and you make a step, and now they have a visual of exactly what it should look like. And then, they're just sequencing through the torch and make it really, really simple. So
it's going to make life for the welder a lot easier. It's taking a lot of the guesswork out.
Exactly. It's not about, we want it to be that it's a positive. It makes it easier for the welder, and we're not policing them. We're giving them nice visual, with images and even GIFs, where it shows you like the direction we want you to weld or how you want to do something.
Up hand, down hand.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Torch angle. Yep. All that can be shown. So
okay.
Yeah, no.
That's got to make it a lot easier for like new people getting into the industry. Especially if they don't have that technical background getting into it.
Yep, definitely. One of the customers we talked to, one of their struggles is they have guys that have been there for 20 years and they bring somebody in new, so they have all this tribal knowledge with these guys that know what they're doing. How do you transfer that to a new welder without let's be honest, that's a rough environment sometimes for new people coming in.
Oh, yeah.
It's intimidating, right? So now we have something where maybe the really experienced people can help develop some of that. So as you come out of training and then you're a new welder in that company, you start working in one of those cells where you get this direct instruction. And it's, again, very simple to use, and you just there's a button on the torch that you step through and do all of your welds, and then any assembly steps or other things that are required.
Yeah, that's got to help out with the skills gap issue too, because in the next couple of years we're losing 50% of our workforce.
Definitely.
So if you can capture that information, that knowledge now, and put it into a machine, now you've got step-by-step work instructions to, like you said, train up the new people.
Yep, and it's one of the other things we've talked about with the development team is it really needs to be something that's stable for 5-10 years, so that companies who rely on that kind of thing have that. And then if they lose somebody who knew how to weld that part, they can go back to it with maybe somebody who's new or not as experienced to be able to put it together and do it properly for good quality. It costs companies a lot of money to make bad parts, that's what's important about it. So, yep.
Yeah, lower reject.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Definitely.
Well, awesome. Do you see any specific markets where this technology would best be suited for?
Really, our focus right now as a company in the U.S. is customers that have maybe 5 to 10 welding machines and they don't have the IT department that can put all this together. It really is something that a welding supervisor can do in 30 minutes and have something functional. They go out, take some pictures of what they're doing, they drop it all in the editor, and it can be set up and ready to go. It requires very simple off-the-shelf hardware. One of our standard TPSI or iWave machines, and then you just have preferably a touch screen that you have in the cell, and then they make these mini computers now that are the size of your wallet pretty much, but you just need something like that can run it, and you can really set it up in an hour and you're going. So
awesome. Very slick technology. Yep. Very cool thing.
We wanted to make it really easy for smaller companies, and if you do have if you are a big company and you want to control everything, that's available too, but that goes up different levels, and those guys always have some really smart controls and IT guys that can put that together. So
okay.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Anything else upcoming for Fronius this week?
Yeah, I think so. So tomorrow, we've already shown it since the beginning of the week, the dynamic wire on the iWave. As you maybe know it, so the dynamic wire is a cold wire feeding process for TIG, which is highly flexible because it regulates itself. But tomorrow it will be the first demo without the fixed mounted wire feeder. It will be removed from the welding torch. So on the one hand, you have the wire in the hand. It will automatically feed. It will automatically adjust to your arc. And in the second hand, you have the torch, meaning you have the full flexibility like you would manual weld TIG, but
I've got an endless spool of wire.
Exactly. It will feed automatically and you have it in your hands, or you're flexible in corners, for example, on some smaller joints where this fixed arm on the end of the torch would just be in your way otherwise.
Yeah. That's got to be huge in Europe, because I know a lot of folks in Europe, they don't use a foot pedal.
No.
Here, foot pedal is like a primary. I mean, that's a go-to. Every TIG system, you got a foot pedal.
Yeah.
I was speaking with some folks out of Germany, and they're like, foot pedals, you guys still use those things? No, it's all handheld.
Yep.
No, it's not too common for us.
Yeah, it's kind of a hot topic, because that's something that we work on, and we're trying to make sure that the foot pedal solutions in the U.S. work for our customers, and it's different in other parts of the world, so that's why some of this is really important. But Philip was talking about, I think we're calling it, it's called the TIG pen?
Yeah,
yep.
TIG pen.
So it'll be a new product. Seems like a really simple thing, but we're trying to get to the point where the customer can control the entire TIG performance, and it's not just about the skill of the, as you're mentioning, it's getting harder and harder to find people to come into this. So if we can help them build up their skill set, finding somebody who's a very good TIG welder, walking around, that's difficult, right?
Yeah, that's difficult. But with the dynamic wire, in my opinion, it would also work really well, for example, on very long welds in a swimming pool construction. I think that's the perfect solution there, because finding someone who can do this in really good quality as a manual TIG welder, it's hard. But with a dynamic wire, you can also get a medium good welder to do a fantastic job on it.
Now, how are you able to control the amount of wire that's coming out? Is that based off of volts or amps, resistance?
It's based on two things. Basically, you set it up it's controlled with the amperage of the TIG process on the one hand, and then it will regulate depending on your arc length. So the longer the arc, the higher the voltage, the faster it will feed them.
Okay. It's actually sensing right in the puddle, so there's a voltage is applied to the wire. It's a safe voltage, and it senses when it loses contact. Basically.
Yeah, it senses when it's in the arc, or if it's touching the workpiece, or it's out of it somewhere.
Yep. Now, how much stick out from the actual pen can you have? I mean, how much wire are you sticking out to be able to feed into that puddle?
I think it's around about 3-4 centimeters on the pen when you try it. We'll see tomorrow.
Yeah, and then you usually want to target about 2 millimeters from the tungsten, like straight out of it, as far as like a position that you're targeting to have it in the puddle. And then, it's going to vary. You just want gas coverage. So, that's one of the other things that it can do for you is if you have someone who's doing the traditional method of dabbing with a cut length filler, the occasional, they pull it out of the gas shielding a little too far. And if it's an alloy that, and it's hot and
like titanium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So
it sucks up the impurities, and you jab that right in the puddle.
You just jabbed it in the puddle, and you keep on your merry way. But it's got a problem there now, And this keeps the wire in there, so there's you can have it right in there, and it's controlling that. So
Okay. Well, awesome, gents. I really appreciate you taking time out of the day to share all this information with the listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So,
anytime.
Yeah, good deal. Thanks,
Hope
sir.
you enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to Fronius Fridays. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation and found some takeaways you can use to help you along your welding journey. For more information on Fronius and their product line, head on over to FroniusUSA.com. I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.